Hello everyone, Reza here. Welcome to another Marvelous Designer video. Now, in this video, we are going to tackle a topic that we haven't talked about yet, and that is topology. We are going to explore different types of topology within the application and all the tools that are available to us to enhance the existing topology on our model. It's going to be particularly useful if you wish to sculpt the piece further in software packages like Modbox, ZBrush, or Nomad, or if you wish to simulate the end result to software packages like Maya, Blender, or Max for further simulation. So hopefully it's going to be a useful session. Let's get started. All right, so every time you start with Marvelous Designer, by default, your garment is triangular. So all the 2D fabrics that you create using outline patterns are going to be created using triangular mesh algorithm. How do we know that? If I go to settings and preferences, and then I'm going to go to preferences, if I go to 3D, under mesh rollout, triangle is selected. Now, how do I know that this mesh has been triangulated? It's actually quite easy. You go under this rollout, Alt 1, and you select mesh. If I zoom in, you can see it's a triangle. So there is nothing wrong with it really. It actually works really well inside Marvelous Designer. As a matter of fact, Marvelous Designer manual suggests that you keep this topology so you speed up your simulation and you avoid glitches, and only when you finish your work, convert everything into different types of topology. The problem is for detailed 3D garments that needs to round smoothly, such as shirt color or piping, then you definitely need to have a quad. Otherwise, your object won't deform. It will cave in, it will collapse, and would look bizarre. So gotta keep an eye on how you deform your topology. For something like a tablecloth, that's not going to be a problem. But if you're creating a fancy dress or a garment with a lot of soft curvatures, then this is going to be a problem. Not to mention, when you finish everything, if you wish to export this to another software package, which many of you do, you cannot edit it. It's impossible to edit this topology because this is considered an absolute mess. I'm not sure if you have noticed, if I zoom in, you don't see even a loop. So everything is more of a star where 5 points get connected to 1 point, and you can see kind of individual islands of different n-gons. Recipe for disaster in some other software packages, and again, it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to edit it. So this is triangular mesh, and you can see on this pair of pants it works just fine. I can even go ahead with the simulation, try to simulate it, and you can see it simulates just fine. At this point, there's nothing wrong with it. You already know that I can actually go into 2D pattern window. I can set up and reduce particle distance. The particle distance has already been reduced to 10. So if I bring it to something like 30, it actually shows a little bit of artifact here and there. You can see some areas are starting to poke out, and the garment, the silhouette of the garment is not going to be as smooth. So if you wish to use triangular mesh, then you have no choice but to reduce the particle distance in millimeter to refine the contour of your pants. All right, let's explore another type of topology inside Marvelous Designer. Now let's see how we can convert synchronized 3D garments into a better mesh structure. I can go ahead and select the garment all the way, and you can do that in 2D and 3D. I can go to Edit and select all and right click on it and go quadrangulate. Now you may say, if this tool converts every single triangle or couple of triangles into a quad, then we probably solved all of our problems. All right, let's convert this thick geometry into a mesh and have a look at the result. This tool does convert all the triangles into quad, but not all the time. There are few quirks in there, few problems in there that needs addressing. Remember that I was complaining about not having a loop when we deal with triangular mesh. Well, with quadrangular mesh, the loops are all over the place for no apparent reason. So although you deal with a quadrangulate mesh, it's a bit chaotic. For some particular examples, that is not a problem. For example, I had this type of topology in making a hat tutorial, and I really didn't make big deal out of it because I'm not going to deform that hat in any form or any shape. But in making the pants tutorial, I had this topology, and that may create problems because this topology is still not the cleanest in my opinion. We aim for quads and we got quads, but in some areas, for some unknown reason, we get kites, we get stars, we get different types of sort of bad topology. It's not going to be deformed as smoothly. Not to mention, if you take this to software packages like ZBrush for further tweaking, just like triangular mesh, this model gives you grief. So the topology keeps fighting against your brushes inside ZBrush, or Modbox is going to be a pain in the neck. So while this is an improved version of a triangular mesh, this still is not going to be ideal for any animation or any sculpting related scenarios. Just keep that in mind if you pick to go ahead with this type of topology. I am going to switch it back to thick mesh, and you can see on the surface this really doesn't look too bad. You barely notice the difference between triangular and quadrangular, but the real difference comes when you want to apply further simulation, you want to sculpt, or you want to animate. Now let's go to the next chapter and let's explore Marvelous Designer's solution to these problems. Now, Marvelous Designer's approach to fix this problem is a tool called Remesh. So the objective of this tool is to generate a aligned automatic retopology result. Now, the way you start with that is you obviously change the 3D garment rendering style to mesh. So I'm going to go in here and change the result from thick garment to mesh, and we have the quadrangulate result that we have. We pick up where we left off. You can even go in here and revert your topology to triangle just to have the worst possible result, for lack of a better word. And with that, and with the particle distance set to 10, let's try this tool. So you basically right click on a pattern or in a 3D window, or you select remeshing on the pop-up menu. I'm going to right click on the 3D pattern and we go all the way to remeshing. Let's select and see what happens. Now, instantly, the result looks quite impressive. I'm not going to lie. So I'm actually looking around and zooming in, and you can see we have clear loops. We have evenly distanced polygons across the model. So that looks pretty good. There's one problem I found with this tool, and that's where you have two fabrics meet. The border is going to be a little bit problematic, and Marvelous Designer doesn't know quite how to clean up those areas. For example, if I go and zoom in where we have two panels from left and right, you can see right in here that we start getting some problems. We start getting some chaotic topology because Marvelous Designer doesn't know how to redirect the loops or how to connect the vertices in a way that we have like a seamless loop from one panel to another. So when we're switching to different 2D patterns, that's where this glitch happens. And if you have more of these, then you will encounter more of these problems. Again, that may or may not be a problem, but remember, if you are animating this garment and you have your Alembic file ready to go, you gotta keep a close eye on these areas because they may glitch during your simulation time, they may flicker during your render time. All sorts of crazy scenarios can happen, but all in all, overall look, first glance, it looks 200 times better than quadrangulate or triangular mesh. So this definitely is an option and you guys can go ahead with this, but you just need to be mindful of those small areas. In terms of sculpting, definitely this is something that you can sculpt inside software packages like ZBrush or Modbox. It's just the animation side of things that can be a little bit glitchy. So just so you know, keep an eye on it. Otherwise, this is a fantastic addition to Marvelous Designer. We did not have that only a few versions ago. It was introduced quite lately as beta version, and now in Marvelous Designer it's an alpha version and fully functional. I haven't seen too many bugs or any unexpected crashes when I run this tool. So far so good, and I'm pretty sure this will be built upon in future versions. So totally looking forward to that. All right, this is a quick look on how to work with Remesh. Let's take a quick glance at the retopology tool inside Marvelous Designer as well, and with that we can wrap up our video. Now, on top of these three types that we explored, we can actually manually draw topology on our fabric. So I have an example where I have an avatar, and a very typical approach to garment design where you create one half and try to sort of work on it and symmetry paste it to the other side. And we practice that many times throughout these Marvelous Designer for Beginners series. Now, if I select the patch and go to display and try to get the mesh and zoom in, you can see I've got a really low density particle distance of 8, so it's a very dense model, but we've got triangle. Let's say we do not want to use quadrangulate, we do not want to remesh the model, we want to manually draw our meshes. As an analogy, if you're a Maya user, it's very similar to using Quadra Mesh tool in the application. To do that, you go to, you can do it through 3D or 2D. I usually go to 2D pattern, and in this drop down, we have Edit Topology, Create Topology, and Patch Topology. Now, Edit Topology is where you create a topology first, or you do a patch topology first, and then you switch to Edit Topology, very similar to sewing, where you need to have something to sew first, and you sew patterns, and only then you go edit sew. So that's that. Let's start actually with patch topology. And I love this tool. It's a new addition to Marvelous Designer 11, and it's a great improvement on the topology tool sets. So the way that patch topology works, it gives you this window, and this window defines how many points you would like to have along the segment. So you're allowed to draw a segment from one point to another, and how many points you would like to get, how many divisions you would like to get on that segment. So you can have one patch for the whole thing, or you can basically have multiple patches on one 2D pattern. I would like to have two separate patches, one to cover this area, and I would like to have another one to cover the top portion. So let's see how we can achieve that. First things first, think about how many divisions you would like to have for the bottom section. I think 6 will do, and you can change those numbers after the fact, so it really doesn't matter. If you make a mistake, you can easily improve on that. I'm just going to hover my mouse on top of one of these points and drag, and you can see I'm drawing a line with 6 divisions on it. Click, drag to draw 6 divisions, click, drag to draw 6 divisions. To close it, drag to the original point, click, and I get my divisions. Now here's the cool thing. If you realize that you don't have enough subdivisions on the sides of your fabric and those faces look rather rectangular, then you can easily click on a segment and say, all right, instead of 6, I would like to have 8. You select in the corresponding segment and say, all right, not 6, but 8. And you can see you get a much better result. I can even improve on that and go to 10 for both sides and get a much better result. You can continue with that. I can actually go to probably 14 on this side to get an ideal result, and 14 on this side, and now you can see we get even distribution, evenly spaced quads all across the patch. So very cool, very handy. Let's say I want to continue and finish the top section as well. Best is not to hit create just yet if you think you still have a few things to tweak. So I'm just going to pick up where I left off. I'm going to continue, and the original division was 6. So here's the cool thing. While you have this right in the middle, you can actually go in here and say, you know what, I made a mistake. I meant 6. And now you have 6 divisions here, 6 divisions here, 6 divisions here. There you have your cloth. You can easily click on create now, and now everything has been created for you. You can now go to edit topology and start tweaking with each point. You can double click on a segment to select each loop and move it to left and right, which is really cool. And you can just basically right click on the model and say, I would like to remesh it, and I would like to get a duplicated version, or I would like to remesh it and replace it with the original triangulated surface. I usually go with remesh duplicate, just to make sure that what I have is going to work for me, and if it does, then I can easily select my mesh and delete the old one. So I'm just going to move that to the side, the one that I just created. I can do the same thing here, selecting the move tool and move it to the side, and you can see the difference. So this is the new topology, and this is the old topology. You may say, Reza, I'm getting a little bit of faceted edges here and there. Well, that's no problem at all. You just create your patch with more segments. This is really, really cool. This patch topology is certainly one of my favorite new additions to Marvelous Designer, and I do use it from time to time. It saves me a lot of time because you can do the exact same thing in other software packages. But now I don't need to kind of waste that exporting and importing time and do it all inside Marvelous Designer. There is a more of a traditional approach to topology as well, and that is called Create Topology. So let's have a look at that as well. Now, the objective of Create Topology tool is to draw topology lines on a pattern and create a new mesh. The way that it works is slightly different than patch topology. So with patch topology, you define the segments ahead of time and then you draw your segment. But with Create Topology, you need to create each face one at a time. So you select topology and you go click, 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 and you have one. And then you continue with your topology. It's a little bit more manual, if I may. But again, sometimes the object that you have is a little bit delicate. It's a little bit difficult to figure out how many segments you need. And for that, you may need to go ahead and edit your topology this way. So there are a few shortcuts in here that you can just use. For example, you go to Edit Topology, double click to select a loop. That's how you select a loop, with double click. To select all the vertices, you select one and double click on that vertex or point, and then you select all the points. At any point of time, you can switch back and pick up where you left off and continue with your polygon creation or face creation, whatever you want to call it. So it's a constant toggle between Edit Topology and Create Topology to create an ideal topology. And that again allows you for a slightly more flexible workflow, because everything is manual. You can totally control the number of the polygons, but again, it does take time. Very similar approach to Quadra tool inside Autodesk Maya. I'm gonna switch to Edit Topology again. You can select all of these vertices and press delete. You can select the face and press delete, but it leaves an edge behind. You can select two vertices and just right click and go ahead and merge them. You can go and select more than one vertex and go ahead and merge them. So all of these are possible. You can have a vertex very close to another vertex, and then with that you can right click and say merge all, and it gives you a threshold. Let's say I'm just going to put in like 10 millimeters ratio, and it merges all the stray vertices that you may have in the scene. So I'm just going to undo and close. So these are all the things that you can do within the application. You can also create topology differently. You can go ahead and just create one big block and go to Edit Topology, right click on it and start adding divisions. So that's another way of doing this, to break down one big patch into smaller patches. So that's another thing you can do. And with Create Topology, you can go to Create Topology, hold down Shift Control and add division. So I'm holding Shift Control, and that allows you to add topology. And of course, switching back to Edit Topology, once everything is done, you can just remesh those objects, very similar to patch topology, duplicate, remesh, or replace remesh, and finesse and tweak your topology. All right, that's it. That's the a brief look at the topology tools, topology types inside Marvelous Designer. Now, this information allows you to sort of mix and match techniques and change your strategy based on the mesh that you have. Hopefully, it's going to cut down a little bit of topology time, exporting into other software packages, importing back into software packages, and gives you the freedom that you need to refine and improve on the topology of your work inside Marvelous Designer. I hope you found this video useful. You can follow me on Twitter for any upcoming projects. And as usual, thank you very much for your support via my Patreon. I really appreciate that. You guys are the best. Thank you. Until the next video, see you guys around.